Lord Meghnad Desai, Kishwar, it's such a pleasure to have you with us. You know, you're both writers. You have both written books, but of very different kinds.
How so? Mine don't.
That's the essential difference, because that's what I was getting at.
That's the difference.
So what are discussions at home like?
Oh, well, very good, because as Meghnad said, we write different kinds of books, so we always have
So
a
there's
lot
no
of
clash.
discussion. There's no clash. No, I don't think there would be a clash anyway, because, you know, we are both at this stage in our lives where we're just enjoying the whole process of writing about things that we love to write about.
Yes, but then do you discuss your work? Because you need
Sure.
people as a sounding board
Sure.
when you're writing.
That's why it's easier if you're married to an author, because you have somebody who understands the subject perfectly,
Yeah.
and then you can sit and talk about the whole process of writing also, or even what you want to put into it. So there are many advantages.
That's right.
To
But
this,
here's a man who deals a lot with numbers, Lord Desai.
But I also deal with things other than numbers.
Do you?
Yes.
Tell us more about that.
I mean, even in my economics, I did both the technical stuff and the non-technical. A lot
Yes.
of history of thought, Smith and Ricardo and Marx and things like that.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be identified with just a number cruncher,
Right.
you know, or a mathematical person. Growing up in India, the nice thing was we were always encouraged to have very wide reading.
Yes.
You know, as far as possible, everybody wanted to go to the
What were
library.
you reading in your growing up years?
Oh, all sorts of things nobody would ever read. You know, I more or less spent my youth in libraries.
Is it?
Absolutely. I had a morning college, and all afternoon I would be in one or the other library, either my college library, or the British Council library, or the Bombay University library.
And what were you reading?
I was reading French. You know, anytime I saw a book and I didn't know what it was about, I'd take it out and read it. So I came across Jean Cocteau very young, when nobody was reading that.
Right.
André Gide, you know, Sartre, all those things. You know, nothing to do with my exams. And I read a lot of Shaw, Ibsen. I translated some Ibsen in Gujarati, and you know, all sorts.
You
of
translated Ibsen in Gujarati?
Yeah, I translated Doll's House
A
into
Doll's House.
Gujarati, and we staged it
Excellent.
on behalf of my college.
Were you acting?
No, I was not acting.
Ah.
In those days, I was shy and retired.
A lot has changed
I
then.
think a lot of things then.
Thankfully, Kishwar.
No, well, I think Meghnad has two sides to his personality. He's very outgoing. He's definitely very engaging, both as a writer as well as a speaker, and of course a teacher. But I think there are moments where I think the shyness sometimes does still
Takes
come
a
out.
backseat.
Yeah, no, the shyness still comes out.
Oh, it still comes out?
Yeah. There's certain things he can't do. You know, like
I can't imagine you like that.
I cannot push myself.
no, he cannot. He cannot.
cannot push
Yeah,
myself.
yeah. He doesn't know how to do that. I mean, and that's very big in India. You know, you have to know how to promote yourself, how to
Yeah.
sell yourself, what
Why
to do,
just
whatever.
India, Kishwar? I mean, this is
Well, anywhere in the
truth
world. But I
anywhere in the
find
world.
it's happening more and
No,
more here. You know, we
and
were all brought up to be sort of
Yeah.
retiring about your own achievements, but I don't find that is happening anymore, even in the world of writing. You have
That
to
has changed quite a lot,
quite
you think,
a lot,
Kishwar?
yeah,
And you've
yeah.
been in the space for a long time, and you've had a journalistic background as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
You think this has
This has definitely changed, yeah. Because when I started
For the better,
writing,
for the worse?
you know, I think in a way it's a good thing. It's got, again, two sides to it, because I think when my career was in television, and so I was very used to, you know, presenting and so on. So I thought I was entering into this shy, again, like Meghnad said, reclusive world of being a writer. I hadn't bargained for all these literary festivals where, you know, have to go there and you literally have to talk about your work. And I think fortunately, because I came from that background anyway, where we were engaged in conversations all the time, I could probably make that transition a little more smoothly. So it's not been a bad thing. But at the same time, I think there's a little too much emphasis now on marketing, on what will sell, which never used to be before when you
More
wrote books.
presentation than content?
Yeah, I think that has changed.
Yeah, but talking about shyness, Lord Desai,
Yeah.
you're not very shy. You don't hold back when you talk
No.
about India
No.
and the Indian economy, what could have been done and what hasn't been done. You
No.
don't hold back there.
I have no shyness about other people, other things. If I had to promote you, I'd be fantastic. I'd go out and tell everybody. If I had to promote myself, I fall back.
You're saying you're self-effacing.
Yeah, but I think what it is.
But that is true.
Although
Yeah.
the whole world is very similar, I spent a lot of time abroad, and then I had to do less of that than I would have to do here. I mean, their merit counted, and people were tracking me in my merit, in my career, and so on. So by and large, things happen without my having to push too much. And some things happen, like my peerage, without me asking anybody or putting in a word to anybody at all. It just came. And it astonished me. Also, in Taken, I thought of my friends, but that's another story. And when something like that happens, you say, why do I want to push myself?
But then, in a sense, are you suggesting that there was a parallel life, the kind that you had to lead in the UK and the kind that you had going for yourself in India?
No, I'm still leading that life in UK because that's where I live.
No, but you're saying that it was all about merit, and you didn't have to.
Here,
it works differently here, is what you're suggesting.
There is no doubt that even at the very top, people are pushing each other out of the thing, and you have to get in there and say things or be quite sure that you are recognized for what you are. And I gotta think, who cares? I know who I am. If they don't recognize, they don't recognize. What's to do with me? Now, see, that is not a career advancing technique in India.
Right.
Luckily, I don't need
You're not in a space where you're looking at career advancement. Right.
So, and what makes me bold about things, because I can be critical, both there and over here.
Yes.
Even at the cost of my own as it were, private fortune of my career, because I've
But many would argue that being overtly critical is a way of being able to draw attention to yourself, because that's the kind of noise that we see on Indian television news at prime time every evening.
I think there is a difference. You are being critical because you want to attract attention, and Meghnad's kind of criticism is constructive. He is actually trying to point out flaws which might exist, and he does this everywhere. I mean, not just here, but even in the UK.
Yeah, we heard a lot of that yesterday, because the topic of discussion has been India has blown it, and you were vociferously for the motion.
Absolutely, yes.
You truly believe that, or is that a stance that
and I'm very upset. I'm very upset. I was speaking of somebody who desperately wants India to do much better. And I thought, given the time when I was growing up, what India was like in 1950s and so on, I almost thought, like James Astral was saying, that it had overcome the various things, and now there is going to be this, unremitting, rapid growth, improvement of people's lives, and so on. And it is not so much that we have fallen back, but that there is no admission that we have fallen back in the people who are making the policies.
So it bothers you that there is no realization that we could have achieved so much more.
Yeah, and the people who have failed to achieve much more have no sense of contrition or no sense of, they're not apologizing. They're carrying on as if, everything is all right.
Well, Desai, let me ask.
And also, sorry, one more thing. They're very arrogant with respect to foreigners. When foreigners say, listen, if you improve your policy, we might invade. They say, who are you? We are an old civilization. We will go on forever, whether you are here or not. Somebody wants to put
Lord Desai, I was speaking to, and since you brought up this point, I was talking to Nick Gowing, and the kind of journalism that he's practiced and the kind he's represented through the BBC, and he's the longest serving presenter there. He's been at most crisis situations around the world, but the longest criticism for a journalist of his kind would be that they swoop into a crisis and they go out. And that is the notion about foreigners.
Yeah.
When you're coming in, you're looking at it from the outside. Yes, there is a perspective, but surely you're talking about a civilization, and you're talking about a certain trajectory of growth, or maybe the lack of it.
Now, you see, all the civilization talk is jam yesterday and jam tomorrow, but no jam today. Okay? But people, in a shortfall of growth of something like 4 percentage points, almost double-digit inflation for 4 years, actually hurts people. And that is a failure. It may be that in the medium run everything will be hunky-dory. I think that. But that doesn't prevent me from pointing out that this has to be criticized. I have nothing to gain from either one way or another. I'm not a political placeholder here, nor I'm fighting an election, nor I'm in any party. But it behoves me, therefore, even more as a neutral but inside observer, to say what I think.
To set the record straight, Lord Desai, then tell us where you think India, post-independence, really lost the plot.
Well, I think in the long trajectory, the Indian leadership, the Indian bourgeoisie, or what do you call it, failed to transform the country as much as other post-colonial nations have done. And I'm not talking about China. I'm talking about places like Malaysia or South Korea, which is also a post-colonial country. They were able to govern and transform their country, make it much more modern, much richer. And there are multiracial cultures. In Malaysia, there's multiracial culture, many religions. Okay, it's not our size, but still there are a lot of people there.
Equivalent to a state, perhaps, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, the states
But
could have done it.
And to me, it seems that, the kind of dreams people had, say, the National Planning Committee of the Congress Party before independence, they were thinking of quadrupling income in a decade. Okay, that's a little bit too much. But even doubling income in a decade would have been good. But nothing. For 40 years, we were growing at a 3.5% growth rate, and being very smug with it. Since 1991, we have done better, but we can't sustain it.
Is it a function of the government or is it the people?
I think once the reforms have started, the people's energies have been released. But government does occasionally stand in the way of people.
Right.
It was standing much more. Now, lately, in the last 3-4 years, it has begun to stand much more in the way of the people than it really ought to.
To what end?
Secure re-election. A very risk-averse attitude. Let's not reform. Let's go and do entitlements. Let's just go spend money.
In a way, it suggests that people don't see that you are a stumbling block. The government is a stumbling block, and that takes away some of the evolution of the Indian society.
No, I have a private feeling. I'm not so private because I also said it publicly, that this election is going to be a game changer. In some sense, India has finally grown up. There was dependency on a great party, which was very important, so on a great family and all that. But that kind of, reverence or whatever you call, I think is eroding very much.
Right.
And people are demanding much better outcomes from the government. And this election is going to be, therefore, a remarkable event, in my view.
You think it's going to be more issue-based?
Yeah, it is going to be whatever the electoral campaign. I think the people are going to decide on a kind of what they want from the government, and they want much better performance.
Right. Kishwar, evolution of a society comes a lot from the social space. We have talked a lot about Lord Desai's understanding of the economics of it. But you have been dealing with a lot of issues related to the social strata of Indian society as well, and gender-specific issues. Tell me how you've seen this space evolve over the period of time that we are talking about.
I would like to say that yesterday we had a debate during the Literature Festival about India having blown it, and there was an attempt that was made to sort of divert the discussion into other issues away from the economics of it. But ultimately, it is the economy, stupid. You do end up with economic issues, and the gender issue, the whole gender debate in this country is a debate about economics.
You think so?
Of course, it is. It is about the status of women who have been kept out of work, out of schools, out of colleges, out of the real work which can give them economic dividends and make them into people who can contribute towards the economy. And this has been completely not understood, not addressed by any government in power. More particularly, I would like to blame the present government, because a lot of these issues have been coming out pretty openly in the last few years, and we saw some of it happening, even I would say even issues like rape, because ultimately what happens? There is a girl who's an aspirational person who goes out there, her parents, I'm talking about the Nirbhaya case, for example, she goes out there looking for a job, and it so happens her parents have to sell their land, their property in order to educate her and everything. They're doing the right thing, but ultimately there is a pushback from society. There is a pushback from, you can say it is the men or it is the social space or whatever, that cannot bear to see an independent young woman out there. And this is the economics of it, because we're just not used to this. They see a woman with a guy and they just assume one thing, which is a sad aspect of our society, that we do not have enough working women, we do not have enough iconic women out there to whom the whole country can look towards, not just men and, not just men, I would say men and women, and look up and say, I want to be like that. And everybody pushes them towards that yes, you can achieve whatever you want to do. Then the whole gender side issue, which has been happening and has dogged this country for decades now, for centuries, it's an economic issue, because the girls are killed at birth or even earlier. It's assumed that they will never get a job, that it's useless educating them because they'll go off to some other family. So why bother, And then you have to pay this dowry, which unfortunately even the laws are in place to ban it. It hasn't gone away.
Which is why I'm
so
saying
it's all economics at the end of it. But I would say that what we need is an enlightened government, So you need economics, good economics, but you also need the good policies in place, and you need implementation of law and justice as well.
That's right. But that attitudinal shift, and this is my last question to you, Lord Desai, that is going to be very important, and it's going to be a lot to do with people like you, the authors, the writers, the social thinkers, who are going to be able to drive change. Considering that the government hasn't delivered, it's going to be a lot up to the people themselves to bring about that all-important change.
Oh yes, within my 50 years I've lived abroad, the attitude to women has changed fundamentally in the West. And it has become much better. Now, when a man sees a woman on her own, he doesn't presume that she's either married to somebody or whatever. He can understand that she's probably a professional person working and so on. When I meet a woman like that, I always, are you a lawyer? Are you, and if you start the conversation that way, then you're giving her the same dignity as yourself.
Absolutely.
Now, that attitudinal change came obviously from the government being not an obstacle, but the society and basically people, the articulate people, the journalists, writers, intellectuals, fighting the fight both at home and outside in society and saying, listen, we've got to do better than that.
Right.
And you have to invest in women.
Absolutely.
Don't sort of turn a blind eye.
Absolutely.
And it is hard to imagine that this whole feminist issue became a big thing on the left because the men were so smug about their revolutionary attitudes. Women said, don't be ridiculous. You're not revolutionary at all. Look at your attitude to women, you're a male chauvinist pigs. That flowered a whole change in people who thought they were the greatest.
Yeah.
And when they realized that they were not, change started.
Absolutely.
And here in India, that change is yet to come.
Is yet to come. It's a slow process, but one is very positive about the future, and we hope, despite your stand on the subject about India having blown it, there is that great optimism out there. Thank you, Lord Desai. Kishwar, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.